What is consciousness? And what does it mean to truly live life awake? Welcome to Clarity to Consciousness, a podcast where we transcend beyond stereotypes, embracing a deeper understanding. I'm your host, Leigh Griffiths, a fellow seeker on this path. Join me on a journey as we dive into conversations with experts, unraveling stigmas, and expanding our awareness to something profound. This is your invitation to open your mind with me as together we bring clarity to the fascinating complexities of human consciousness. Welcome to another enlightening episode of Clarity to Consciousness. I'm your host, Leigh Griffiths, and today we're diving deep into the fascinating intersection of astrology and career choices. I haven't talked much about astrology on the show before, so I'm really excited to dive into it. Have you ever wondered how your astrological chart could reveal your ideal career path or help you uncover your dream job? I really had no idea that astrology could be used in this way, so I'm so excited to learn more about how we can make conscious career choices using our astrology chart as a tool. So if you're like me, you're in for a treat. Joining me all the way from Australia is the talented Zinzi Bianca. As a Vedic astrology practitioner, Zinzi is unique in her gifts with interpreting the stars and guiding others towards fulfilling careers that resonate with their true selves. In this episode, we'll explore how astrology can form our career decisions, uncover the insights hidden in our personal astrology charts, and discuss practical tips for navigating the workplace through this lens of astrology. So whether you're seeking clarity on your current job or exploring new opportunities, this conversation is sure to inspire and empower you on your journey. So welcome to the show, Zinzi.
Well, thanks so much, Kristen. Really appreciate the intro. Thanks so much for having me.
I'm so excited to have you here. Before we get into astrology too much, I would love to hear your background and what brought you onto this career path.
Big question. So, my first career was actually in civil engineering in construction. And there's something that happens, I think, when you really realize the misalignment in what you're doing and how that starts to manifest in your mind and your body. And for me, it was really got to a point where it was really profound and felt like I was in the wrong place, doing the wrong thing in what I was doing. I was out of alignment. And even though I really loved the work, it was really triggering me in so many different ways. So that first off, a career change was a big prompter there. And I thought, I'll change my job. That'll sort the situation out. Found a different company. The same things kept happening, getting really anxious thoughts, really worried, just felt like I was really in the wrong place. And then I realized that I needed to make a much bigger change, that where I was going was not the path that I was meant to be on. And it was actually all of those challenges that then drove me to start to inquire a bit more about my own mind. How could I not only make a change to a more supportive environment and a path that was actually aligned, but also manage my mind better? So that was my initial kind of step in, and curiosity about yoga was how it manifested for me initially. There was a new yoga studio opening up at the time that I'd decided to study something completely different. And I thought, I'll just go and explore that. And over time, I realized that yoga wasn't really about the physical practice, that there was so much more to it. The inquiry of what's happening in the mind when we're doing these different poses, how that's feeling in the body. And it really planted a seed of, oh, I can really see myself exploring this further. So I ended up on a yoga teacher training in Bali. And somewhat unexpectedly, part of that yoga teacher training was Vedic astrology. So we just got a little taster into astrology, and that definitely planted, like the spark was ignited there. Of I just really could feel this real opening and resonance with what was being shared, how it was being shared. So it was very much integrated between yoga, meditation, and these deeper aspects of life and the practice, as well as astrology. So I don't see them as actually exclusive to each other. The practices are very much integrated. The more that we foster our own spiritual practice, the more that becomes available in terms of our intuition and connecting with those things that we can't necessarily see in our lives. So that's how I first sort of came across Vedic astrology. And then from there, I just wanted to go deeper and deeper. And I found my teacher, who is originally from India and now teaches from the States. And I've been studying with her, doing her foundational course for over 3 years. And then now I'm part of the advanced training. So Vedic astrology is one of those fields that you can be continuing to do training in your entire life. People might see an astrological thing that you might see in the newspaper or a magazine, could go, this is your star sign and this is what's coming up for the month. That is just one tiny little snapshot of what it's about. And yeah, we can think that it's so simple, but actually it's so deeply complex as we are as humans. So it reflects us. We're not just one surface level, one star sign. We've got a lot more going on below the surface and in different ways interplaying in our lives. So it's, yeah, there's so much to it.
Well, there's so much to unpack there. So I love what you shared. Thank you so much for sharing your career path, because I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that may feel like you felt, where they're sitting in their current role, and we spend so much time at our jobs. So it is a really important to have something that you enjoy. It's something I instill in my son all the time. And he's only 8, but it's like we spend so much time at our jobs, and to be feeling that way all day long, that's really really not a good feeling if you're not happy. So I love that you made the change. I think it takes a lot of bravery to do that. I'm sure we could talk more about that later, but thank you for sharing.
My pleasure. And it's through, I think, now having also a different relationship with challenges. So, how we see challenges in life, we can, um, in astrology, a lot of the challenges can be reflected as something connected with Saturn, the planet that is connected with our karma, creates obstacles, can add pressure, and it does that. Even though it can be harsh, it does that in a really loving way. If we're misaligned, if we're not quite on the right path, then it can give us those really like hard nudges at times, or sometimes a great big old shove into what is meant to be. I think because if I had been in my career just feeling like it's okay, it'll do, that's fine, it's kind of not causing any massive issues, it doesn't really prompt us to make change. So I'm really grateful because all these challenges led me to this deeper spiritual inquiry and to finding Vedic astrology and being able to support my amazing clients.
Can you explain the difference between Vedic astrology, and then is there other kinds of astrology? Can you just give us a little background on that?
Absolutely. So I'll just segment them into two really basic. So we've got Vedic astrology and we call it Western astrology. So they're and I'm sure there are other systems of astrology, but I can only really speak to a high level. So Vedic astrology, which is also called Jyotish in Sanskrit, the study of light, we use a zodiac that then is very much connected or different to the zodiac that is used in Western astrology. So the signs are the same, but the way that we view the sky is different. So if we rewind maybe about 1 or 2,000 years ago, the way that we viewed the stars was the same. And then over time, Vedic astrology takes into account the tilt and the wobble of the earth, and it then reads the visible sky. So if you got your telescope out and you looked at the stars, that's what's reflected in the software and the technology that we use, which is based on really ancient calculations. In Western astrology, it's more, from my understanding at least, it's more based on a different way of reading the zodiac, which is connected with the sun. So it uses the equinoxes and it doesn't necessarily reflect the visible sky. So you might think that the sun is in Libra and it's actually in a different sign. So if you see a Vedic astrologer, what it actually comes down to, if you see a Vedic astrologer versus a Western astrologer, know that your star sign might be completely different. So there's a good 20 or something degrees difference between the two. So know that you could be a completely different star sign. Sorry, that's what it boils down to.
Oh no. I could be following the wrong star sign this whole time.
Could be. And sometimes for people, it might be that it doesn't really resonate with you. If it does, there's a chance it could be the same. And when we say star sign, it's only one planet. That's the sun's placement in a star sign when we say star sign. But actually, we've got all the other planets and we've got our ascendant as well. So you're not just one star sign. And in Vedic astrology, we actually prioritize the moon over the sun. So that's another big difference, because the belief or the understanding is that the moon reflects the mind, and what happens in the mind happens first, and then it comes into fruition in our physical world and through our soul and our actual physical external expression of life, which is then connected with the sun. So it's sort of an internal prioritization first, knowing what we create inside in our minds then manifests externally in our world and can be reflected by the sun.
It's new to me too. Okay, so interesting. Well, we haven't, as I mentioned in the beginning, we haven't talked about astrology here on this show before. So, before we get into the career aspect, any other basic astrology info that might be helpful for the audience to know before we talk about how astrology can benefit us when thinking about our career?
Some really high level basics. Okay, so we have, like I mentioned before, we have the various different planets. So in Vedic astrology, we only use the visible planets. So each of the planets represents different aspects of ourselves. So they all have different traits and qualities and ways of influencing our lives and reflecting what's happening in our lives. And we also use the nodes, so the northern and the southern nodes, Rahu and Ketu, and so that we can see what's going on. Sometimes what happens in someone's chart, so I'll speak to a chart as well. What we use as the main basis for astrology is called a birth chart or a Rashi chart in astrology in Sanskrit. So we imagine at the time and place of your birth, if you were to take a snapshot of the stars and planets, that's what your birth chart is. And the belief system is that we're not coming into this lifetime for the first time. So it's based on the collective of our karma that then shows what's going to happen in life. It's not all fixed. We create some of our karma in this lifetime, but it gives us a good indication. So what's happening inside is then reflected in the stars. And then if we look into the stars, if we were to divide them up into 12 different houses, they then reflect the different areas of our lives. So the first house is the ascendant. It's our physical expression in the world. It's the most important house. And it keeps going on to all 12 houses. So the seventh house is connected with relationships. The 10th house is connected with career, and on it goes with all the 12 houses. So they're at a basic level, knowing that you have more than one planet to represent. So you might have different qualities. Like you might be myself, I have a lot of planets in Pisces, but I also have my Sun and Jupiter in Aquarius. And I've got a couple of planets in Scorpio. So I know that I bring together these different qualities and understanding then where these planets are located. So some in the 12th house, some in the 9th house, we can then see what does that actually mean. So there's so much information that's available to us in understanding what's going on in our charts and in the sky.
Thank you. That was really helpful. And I think it's a nice backgrounder into the next discussion. So I really appreciate you taking the time to do that.
My pleasure.
All right. So getting into career choices. So, how can our birth charts or our astrological charts help us influence our professional paths?
So, in a number of different ways. So, I'll start with the actual houses that I was just speaking to before. So, the most important house is the ascendant. So, when I say ascendant, it's the first house, and that's the actual star sign that's rising at the time that you're born. And that shows us a lot of our qualities, our natural nature, what we're being guided by that central point. And then the second most important house connected with the career is the 10th house. So it's literally a house of career. You can understand, like, if you know what that career house is, say it's Virgo, then you have a really good sense that you might have really high perfectionistic qualities in your career, in the work that you're doing. You're also really good at business, you're analytical, you know how to be really methodical in how you're approaching your work. So you can really get a strong sense then about how do you work well and what are the conditions that would really support you in the workplace. What are the ingredients, the environment, the people, the types of work? You can then very much align it with those different areas. There are a bunch of different layers beyond that, but knowing what your ascendant, your rising sign is, and also your house of career can be really great insight for you. So that's two main things. The other thing that it's really helpful in connection with career is knowing when big transitions happen. So your guest might have heard, or your listener might have heard about Saturn returns and different planets when they complete. So that's basically it completing a full cycle around the Earth, that we've started somewhere and it's come back to that full starting point. So we can have different periods of life where that full cycle is coming over a significant part of our chart. So that might be it's coming over our ascendant, or you might have a collection of planets where then that big planet is transiting over. So we can then get a sense of when major change is happening or underway. And one more area that is unique to Vedic astrology is a planetary system. So, and you can start to see a little bit just from how I'm talking about the complexity, right? So there's so many different layers. So I'll try and keep it simple. That we have a planetary system that shows us which planet is leading or ruling at any point in our life. So it's super helpful because we have all this different information in our charts, but then we can see who's leading the show and where are they located. So therefore, what are they thinking about? What are their primary motivations? So in terms of career, that can then completely shift the perspective of what's all being prioritized in our lives. So if we have Mars ruling the show, but Mars is located in the 12th house, that already shows us we're probably giving a lot of our energy. So much energy being given. Probably our mind is thinking a bit more on a spiritual level. You could probably do with a lot of travel and working abroad and having a different perspective. So, and having that motivation and drive because you've got Martian energy. So, there's those three different areas that give us lots of good information that then show what's the motivation and the basic aspect of all of this, and really any other tool, is just deeper self awareness. The more that you understand yourself, you can see that through a tool like astrology, through this ancient system, to have deeper awareness of what you truly desire. Because I've seen with clients that sometimes we're just looking for some confirmation that what we have, this little spark deep down, that is actually valid and that's confirmed in our chart. So oftentimes if you are feeling that little, or it's time for a change, or I would really be inspired to do something different, it's really important to listen to that and explore that.
Okay. Let's say someone wants to work with you and take a look at their chart and see where they stand. Can you kind of walk us through that process of what that looks like?
Definitely. So the information that I need to look at someone's chart is first off their time of birth, a date of birth, and their location of birth. So that then gives us that snapshot, right, of the heavens. So I also, what's really important in how I like to operate is making sure that I'm only sharing information that people want to know. Not all of us want to know everything that's about to happen or challenges that might happen. So I find out what people want to know and don't want to know. And I'm really mindful of making sure that what is being shared is helpful and it's inspiring. So it's really good to know who you're working with if you do go and see an astrologer, because sometimes there's not always a filter there. So it's really important to have someone that is supportive for you on your path. And then from there I give a little bit of a guidance as to what is astrology about, and then we start looking at your actual chart. So that's then basically a division of the sky into 12 houses. And then we can see where the 7 visible planets and the 2 nodes are located. What are their patterns that are showing information? What are signs and what houses emphasize? So when I say houses, that's then the area of life that's really being emphasized in your chart. So you might have a number of planets in your 4th house. So the 4th house is connected with home and with mother, and it also looks at a house of career. So if you have really we all have our share of benefic supportive planets and the more challenging ones. So if you have benefic planets in your 4th house, that can then show sort of expansion and support in the home, good relationship with your mother, and also sending this really positive energy towards your career. So we basically see what patterns are there and use that information to then answer any questions that you have. Towards the end of the reading, I share as well about these planetary periods. So we'll see when there's a changeover coming up for you, because what then happens if we're changing from one planet to the next, say you're moving from a sun period that's happened for 6 years, and then you're moving to a moon period that's 10 years, that's a lot of time. So when the changeovers happening and a little bit before and a bit after, we know that life can start to churn a bit. It's starting to, that like literally if we had some soil in a glass and you started to turn it up, it starts to churn and then it settles down when it's in that new location. So we can see the different perspectives, what might be changing, what might be coming your way. And then you can use that energy and that understanding mindfully. So they're the basics of what we explore in a reading. I like to use it to deepen your self-awareness, to confirm different questions you have, answer different questions you have, and it depends how specific your questions are and how accurate your time of birth recording is as to how then specific we can get in the answers that you get.
Yeah, that birth recording time could be the difference maker with it all. I hope that, because I've had a few astrology readings, and I really, really hope that the time that I've been giving is accurate. It feels pretty accurate in the readings, but yeah, I think that's pretty critical piece of it, I'm sure.
Yeah. It really does help. It's not to say that you can't do a reading without it. You can also do a rising sign. So we use the sun in the first house if you don't have the time of birth, which can provide a lot of information. But if you do have the time of birth, and sometimes with people, if your time of birth is sort of a vague indicator, then we can adjust as well according to what actually resonates most and moving the chart accordingly too. So if you're have quite vastly different qualities, like for me, if I was right on the edge of Pisces versus Aries, clearly so much more Piscean, it's easier to make those adjustments. So we work with the information that you do have.
Well, that's a relief. I feel like a lot of people might not know the birth time. I'm lucky that I know mine, but I've met
Yeah.
people who haven't had theirs told to
Usually
them.
usually it's a phone call to mum.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, okay, so if individuals they leverage their unique astrological traits to pursue fulfilling careers, what success stories have you had working with clients in being able to guide them to a better path? Do you have any examples you can share?
Yeah, for sure. I had a client working, with me recently who was quite in a stretched position, wasn't feeling good and aligned where she was, what was happening in her work, and she had different desires of things that she wanted to bring to life. And it was through her astrological chart that we could see this really strong emphasis on creativity. And the beautiful thing with astrology, then, and how I pair it with coaching, is that you don't just get a reading and then find out all this information about yourself and then see you later, try and work that out. We then work together on, okay, we've uncovered this information. Now, how does that actually come to life? So it was amazing how quickly she was able to bring those things to life, to not only find a different job that was her dream job, but also to spark her and start her own creative business. And it's so beautiful to see that coming to life. So, and for other clients, just that sometimes it's like I spoke to before, wanting to see that confirmation of what they were thinking of, and then boom, it all happens so quickly when you have that reinforcement and that understanding. So I see that happen a bit as well in various different ways that clients get to get the benefit of those insights. And it provides then a pathway to that deeper part of ourselves. So it's not just using a tool, and that's where I was speaking to before about yoga and my meditation practice, that it's a whole energetic practice too, that we bring in those subtle aspects, and so that you can start to bring those deeper questions and get that clarity and get moving. Because oftentimes, if it's anything like me and a number of clients, that when you have the challenges, we can go into a victim mentality, but having having that insight as to what's happening, why it's happening, and how it's supporting you, and then having someone alongside you helping you to make those changes, make those transitions to bring your deeper wisdom to the surface is so powerful. So change can happen a lot quicker working with someone like me or another coach that really resonates with you. They might perhaps have their own toolbox, but yeah, change can happen so much quicker and easier and more joyfully.
Well, that makes a lot of sense when you put it that way, because when you have that direction or reassurance, it just is such a feel good, and it might give you a little bit more confidence to take that next step. So I agree with what you're saying, and I can totally understand how that would be um, helpful to clients.
Yeah, absolutely. And as much as it might sound a bit airy fairy, I get very practical with my clients as well. So once you're understanding the direction that you want to go in, then we work on all the practical assets of application letters, LinkedIn, writing your resume. How do you even uncover and discover the types of organizations, what you value, what you want to step towards? So it's a lot more of an intentional, mindful change that you can bring to life. And it's so much easier when you have someone supporting you with all the things that can feel like, oh, that's such a big burden, especially if you're quite stressed where you are right now.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of that, but you actually really help them every step of the way. Um, that I'm sure is so critical, especially when you're going through such a big change. And that probably feels like a very daunting thing. I haven't had a big career change in a while, so but I can imagine that for people who do, having that support is just amazing.
Yeah, it makes such a difference there for sure.
Well, you used the term airy fairy, which I thought was really cute, but astrology sometimes gets a little bit of a bad rap in terms of people don't necessarily take it seriously or think it's just like a silly thing that they read in the newspapers. But I think it might be an interesting idea to bring it more into the workplace. So I would love to hear your thoughts on like how could it be used to help people in their careers as a tool, like in a corporate setting.
Yeah, yeah, such a good question. And it makes me think of however many hundreds or thousands of years ago back to the times where there were kings and queens very much relying on astrology. So we could say almost in that kind of a inverted commas workplace setting, it was a different time where it was highly esteemed. But the way that we evolved through Christianity then took away having an emphasis on multiple different planets that we were worshipping. So I won't go into that in great depth, but to say that it was existing in those same but different settings. So what would I love to see? Well, I think in any workplace, anything that helps people become more aware of themselves is really helpful. Like if you can operate from a really mindful place of, I'm frustrated right now because I'm Aries, I'm trying to move things forward, I'm trying to take action, I've got lots of ideas, but I'm just hitting block after block after block. It's a lot more of an engaging conversation than someone just getting really angry and aggressive, which could also be like Martian energy out of whack from Aries, that you're working from a mindful place so you can make those changes. So anything that helps people become more mindful and self-aware, and then you understand, when you understand yourself, then you can understand what conditions you need to be supported. So, what sort of team structure would work well for you? What sort of interactions, what level of accountability or independence do you want to have in the workplace based on the understanding of yourself and others? Can be It would be such a game changer. And then not even to speak of like the ability then for astrology to predict and guide you almost like a weather forecast, that you can see, okay, if there's things happening, when are they going to be happening, what can we put in place? And oftentimes the challenges can come from misalignments and things not going quite right. So if we're all just focused on the external, so the really masculine things that we're in terms of like masculine and feminine energy, we're very much in a Western world that just wants to constantly output, output, output. We're not looking at how do you nurture people, what are the subtle qualities of how do you support people, how do you understand truly what someone is looking for in the workplace. So it would be such a game changer to have all of those different layers of information. But number one, just being more self-aware. It's yeah, it would make such a big difference because there are so many people that are just operating on autopilot and not really bringing that deeper curiosity. Like if we're in doing work because we want to see the world become a better place, we want to make a positive impact on the world, the number one place to start is with yourself. So it's a tool to guide you inwards in making that bigger change.
That was beautifully said. I agree with you 1,000%. And I think it's such practical advice, even if you don't use astrology, starting with yourself and making changes there is really, really important. So I have enjoyed this conversation so much. I'm going to close today with asking you a few questions that I ask all of my guests. And I'd like to start with reflecting on our conversation. What's one key takeaway you'd like our listeners to remember about consciousness and the work that you're doing in astrology?
Well, a key takeaway, I think, like we just spoke to before, really using whether it's astrology or any other tool to really support you with your deeper self-awareness. When you understand more about yourself, then you're operating from more of a conscious place. And the more that we can be conscious of what we're bringing to life, what our fears are, how we're being triggered, what our desires are, and not just running on autopilot, we'll start to make much more beautiful change in the world and be living much more in harmony with each other the more conscious we are. And yeah, use those tools, whatever resonates with you. And it can be as simple as a meditation or a mindfulness practice as well. The more that we can build a deeper relationship with ourselves, that's the biggest way that we can help the world.
And if someone is just starting their journey towards a deeper understanding of consciousness, what advice would you offer them?
If you're just starting, I would say building your awareness with what's happening in your life. So, a great place to start is through writing, I find. Journaling, capturing what's going on for you, what's happening in your day and your week, and how is that making you feel? And then we can bring some more curiosity to that. And if you're into astrology, even just looking up in the stars, into the sky, if we Vedic astrology is very much connected with Ayurveda, which is the the Indian health and healing system. And there's then this relationship as well with using the stars, using the sky as therapy for us as well, observing the clouds, observing the stars, the moon, the planets, then we can see that we're actually part of something so much greater, and it can support us on a subtle level as well to, yeah, just feel more peace and that connection with something and deeper and greater, which is so, so helpful to our own spirit.
My last question for you is, in your opinion, what does it mean to live life consciously?
To live life consciously, from my opinion, is with awareness of what is happening in your mind, what's happening in your body, and yeah, operating from that place. So rather than being believing that we are the thoughts in our mind, becoming more of the observer of the thoughts, observer of what's going on, and knowing that we are so much greater than just our thoughts, that we have, yeah, we're here for good reason.
That was a beautiful answer. Thank you so, so much. I think that you're going to have a lot of people who want to get in touch with you. I can think of like 5 people off the top of my head who have all been struggling with career issues, questions, things in their lives. So can you please share with our listeners how people can get in touch with you if they'd like to work with you on astrology and their career paths?
Absolutely. So come find me at zinzibianca.com. I'm also on Instagram and LinkedIn. Look up at Zinzi Bianca, also Facebook. So any of those channels, send me a message. I'd love to hear any reflections or questions you have. More than happy to connect.
Thank you. And we will be sure to link all of that contact information in our show notes. Zinzi, thank you so much. This has been a really beautiful conversation, and I just love talking with you and hearing your beautiful accent. Thank you. You're coming to us from a whole different day down under. So thank you.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Kristen. It's been such a joy connecting with you and chatting with you and sharing with you. Awesome.
Oh, thank you so much. And thank you all for listening. As a reminder, if you're watching us on YouTube, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe for more content. And I would love it if you would share with a friend. And if you're listening on the podcast, we would love, love, love a review. Your support in helping us grow is so deeply appreciated. So looking forward to having you back in our next episode. Until next time, much love and bye for now.